The Great Hall of Harmony Prime floated in the darkness of space like a jewel. Inside, representatives from 800 worlds gathered around the circular chamber. Their voices echoed off crystal walls as they argued about the future of the galaxy. Ambassador Shara stood at the center podium. Her blue skin shimmered under the lights as she raised her forearms for silence. The Karathi had ruled much of the galaxy for 3,000 years. When she spoke, others listened. We have evidence, she announced. Her voice carried authority that made even the largest species pay attention. Humanity has broken the treaty of confined development. Murmurs spread through the hall. The treaty was sacred. After the last Great War, all species agreed to limit their military growth. Peace through control, they called it. Humanity had signed the treaty 200 years ago when they first reached the stars. Ambassador Chen Wei sat in the human section. He was a small man with gray hair and tired eyes. Around him, other human diplomats shifted nervously. Chen remained perfectly still. Show us this evidence, Chen said quietly. His words needed no amplification. The hall's technology carried every whisper to every ear. Belshara activated a holographic display. Images filled the air above them. Mining operations in deep space, energy signatures that should not exist, encrypted communications that suggested military coordination. Your official fleet has 47 patrol ships. Velara continued. Old ships, weak ships, yet we detect military-grade communications across 200 systems. We detect resource extraction far beyond civilian needs. We detect deception. Chen stood slowly. He walked to the podium with measured steps. Every eye in the chamber followed him. We mine asteroids for raw materials, Chen said. We communicate for commerce. These things are not forbidden. Do not insult this council with lies, growled Ambassador Krenth of the Kryn Dominion. The reptilian warrior stood nearly 3 m tall. His scales were covered in battle scars. We all know humans are clever, too clever. You scheme and plot in the shadows. Chen turned to face Krenth directly. Perhaps you see shadows because you fear the light. The hall erupted in angry voices. Some species defended humanity, most did not. The Karathi had convinced many that humans were dangerous, too adaptable, too unpredictable. Better to keep them weak. The council arbiter called for order. After an hour of debate, they voted sanctions against human worlds, inspections of all human facilities, reduction of the human fleet to 20 ships. Chen listened to the verdict without expression. When they finished, he simply nodded. We will respond to these measures appropriately, he said. Then he left the chamber. That night, Chen sat alone in his quarters aboard the Earth Embassy ship. The stars stretched endlessly beyond his window. Communication device on his desk blinked. With an encrypted message, he activated it. A woman's face appeared. Admiral Sarah Okonkwo commanded humanity's official defense fleet. Or at least that was what the galaxy believed. They have made their decision, Chen told her. And ours? Sarah asked. Not yet. We must be patient. 3 months passed. Galactic Council sent inspection teams to human worlds. They found nothing unusual. Mining operations, commercial shipyards, civilian infrastructure. Everything appeared normal, but on the outer rim of human space, trouble grew. The Kryn Dominion sent raiding parties to isolated colonies. They attacked Small settlements took resources, sometimes took prisoners, human. Colonists called for help, Chen brought. Their pleas to the council, Felchara dismissed them with a wave of her hand. Internal security matters, she declared. Perhaps humanity should better protect its borders. Oh, but you cannot, your fleet is too small. Her smile was not kind. More raids came. The colony of New Hope lost 17 people. The settlement at Far Reach was burned to the ground. Still the council did nothing. Then they Kryn came to New Horizon. New Horizon was home to 12,000 humans, families, children, farmers and teachers and engineers building a new life on a distant world. They had no weapons, no warships, only hope and determination. The Kryn battle group arrived without warning, 5 warships against a defenseless colony. They offered no terms, they simply opened fire. Massacre lasted 6 hours. When it ended, New Horizon was silent. 12,000 voices stopped forever. News of the attack reached Earth 3 days later. Chen immediately called for an emergency council session. He stood before them with evidence of the atrocity. Bodies, destroyed homes, children's toys scattered among the ruins. This is murder, Chen said. His voice trembled. With controlled rage, you must act. The council debated for 2 days. In the end, they voted against intervention. The Kryn claimed the humans had fired first. There was no proof either way. They said these matters were complicated. They said. Chen stood in the center of the hall one final time. He looked at each ambassador in turn. Belshara with her smug satisfaction, Krenth with his predatory grin, others who looked away in shame but did nothing. 200 years ago, humanity came to you in peace. Chen said, we accepted your rules, we limited our strength, we trusted in galactic law to protect us. Today that trust is dead. He paused. The hall was absolutely silent. You believe humanity is weak. You believe we have nowhere to turn. You believe you can do as you wish without consequence. Chen's eyes were cold as the void between stars. You are wrong. Humanity remembers everything and we pay our debts. He touched a control on his wrist. Throughout the chamber, every human representative stood simultaneously. They walked toward the exits in perfect synchronization. Where do you go? Velara demanded. You cannot leave this council. Chen stopped at the doorway. He looked back one last time. We are not leaving the council, he said softly. We are leaving you to your fate. You wanted to see what humanity does when cornered. Now you will learn. Humanity remembers, and the universe will never forget what comes next. The doors closed behind him. In his pocket, a communication device activated. A single word transmitted across space to coordinates known only to a select few. The word was simple. The word was final. The word was begin. The first reports came from the outer systems. A freight captain near the Helios cluster saw something impossible. A warship appeared beside her vessel, not emerging from faster than light travel, not accelerating from distance, simply there. As if it had always existed. The ship was massive. Its hull was black as midnight, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. No markings, no identification signals. It scanned her freighter with beams of blue light, then vanished the same way it came. Within 6 hours, similar reports flooded in from 200 systems, ships appearing from nowhere, ships that should not exist. Ships that defied every known law of physics. The Galactic Council intelligence agency worked frantically to understand what was happening there. Best analysts studied the reports there. Best scientists examined the scan data. Nothing made sense. Impossible declared. Science Director Mothlan, his insect species had mastered faster than light. Travel 5,000 years ago. There are no energy signatures, no spatial distortion. These ships simply appear. Physics does not allow this. Then we are dealing with technology beyond our understanding, said Intelligence Chief Varkos. She was Karathi-like ambassador Velshara, but her rank was military. We must identify who controls these vessels. The answer came faster than expected. A transmission broadcast on all frequencies across every system. The voice was human. The voice was calm. The voice was terrifying in its certainty. Attention, Galactic Council. This is Admiral Sarah Okonkwo of the Human Defense Fleet, the real fleet. For 150 years, you have kept humanity confined. You have limited our growth. You have mocked our weakness. That was your first mistake. Your second mistake was believing the weakness was real. The transmission included coordinates, the location of the Kryn Dominion's home system. You have 48 hours to withdraw all Kryn military forces from human space. Sarah continued, you have 48 hours to remand those responsible for the New Horizon massacre to human custody. You have 48 hours to recognize that humanity will no longer be victims. The Shadow Fleet is no longer hidden. We are here. We are many, and we will have justice. The transmission ended. Chaos erupted across the galaxy. The Kryn Dominion laughed at the threat. Warm Master Krenth himself gave a public address. Humans make threats with stolen ships. Perhaps they bought this technology from smugglers. Perhaps they borrowed it from foolish allies. Either way, they have perhaps 50 vessels. We have 5,000. Let them come. The Shad Fleet came. 48 hours later, the first Kryn military base simply stopped functioning. Its weapons went offline. Its shields collapsed. Its power generator shut down. Kryn soldiers rushed to their battle stations only to find their ships floating dead in space. Then the Shadow Fleet arrived. Not 50 ships, not 500. 5,000 appeared simultaneously around the Kryn base. Each ship was different. Destroyers, cruisers, carriers, dreadnoughts, all bearing the same black hole that seemed to drink in starlight. They did not fire immediately. They simply surrounded the base in perfect formation. A message transmitted to the Kryn commander: surrender, you will not be harmed. And GT, you will be imprisoned. And GT, you will face trial for your crimes, but you will live. Resist, and we will remove you from your ships and leave you floating in the void. Choose now. The Kryn commander chose to fight. His remaining functional weapons opened fire on the nearest human vessel. The energy beam struck the black hole and simply vanished. The human ship did not even slow down. Return fire was precise. Laser cutting beams sliced through Kryn armor like paper. They cut doors open. They disabled engines. They removed weapon systems. Within minutes, the base was completely defenseless. Boarding pods launched from human ships. Soldiers in advanced combat armor swept through the Kryn station, capturing personnel with ruthless efficiency. No Kryn soldiers died. They were simply defeated so completely that death would have been a mercy compared to their humiliation. This scene repeated across 30 military installations. The Shadow Fleet moved through Krynn space like ghosts. They appeared, they struck, they vanished, always the same pattern. Disable, capture, move on. The Krynn Dominion sent their main battle fleet to stop the humans. 3,000 warships assembled at the Tharsis Junction. They set up defensive positions. They prepared for the greatest battle in their history. The Shadow Fleet never came to Tharsis Junction. Instead, they appeared at the Krynn home world itself. War Master Krenth received the message. Personally, Admiral Okonkwo's face filled his command screen. She looked tired but determined. You thought we would fight you ship to ship, Sarah said. You thought in terms of honor and glory in battle. We think in terms of winning. Your fleet is at Tharsis. We are here at your home world. We have disabled your planetary defense grid. We have control of your orbital stations. We hold 10,000 Krynn military personnel as prisoners. None have been harmed. All are alive. Do you understand what this means? Krenth understood. The humans could have bombarded his world from orbit. They could have killed billions. Instead, they proved their superiority. Without massacre, it was the ultimate humiliation. What do you want, Krenth? Greel, justice, peace, respect. In that order, Sarah's image leaned forward. You will withdraw all Krynn forces from human space permanently. You will surrender those responsible for New Horizon. They will face human courts. You will pay reparations to the families of those murdered, and you will sign a non-aggression treaty that your species will honor for the next 1,000 years. And if we refuse, Sarah smiled without humor, then we stay here above your world forever. A reminder that humanity remembers that we do not forget that justice may be delayed but never denied. Your choice, War Master. Choose wisely. Krenth stared at the screen for a long moment, pride weared with pragmatism. Finally, he lowered his head in submission. We accept your terms. Shadow Fleet withdrew from Krynn space. Within hours, they took their prisoners. They took the war criminals responsible for New Horizon. They left the Krynn Dominion intact but broken in spirit. Across the galaxy, other species watched. In shock, the Galactic Council called emergency sessions. Ambassador Velara demanded action against human aggression, but her words fell on deaf ears. Everyone had seen the same thing. Humanity had not just won a military victory. They had won it without revenge, without genocide, without the brutality that other species would have shown. They had proven themselves stronger than anyone imagined, but they had also proven themselves just. The question spread from world to world. How had humanity built such a fleet in secret? Where did this technology come from? How many ships did they really have? Most importantly, what would humanity do next? Admiral Okonkwo broadcast one final message to the galaxy. She stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Shadow of Earth. Behind her, holographic displays showed thousands of human vessels spread across space. We did not want this, she said simply. We wanted peace. We wanted to be part of the galactic community. You made that impossible. You made us choose between extinction and evolution. We chose to survive. We chose to protect ourselves. And we chose to do so in a way that proved we are not monsters. We are not conquerors. We are simply humans who will no longer be victims. Remember this day. Remember that mercy is not weakness. Remember that humanity offers one hand in friendship and keeps the other ready for war, the universe will never forget the day the Shadow Fleet emerged. Make sure you never give us reason to unleash it again. Transmission ended. The Shadow Fleet dispersed into the darkness of space, and the galaxy realized that everything had changed forever. Ambassador Shara stood before the Cathay High Council in their crystal palace on Koreth Prime. Her four arms trembled with rage. Behind her, holographic images showed the humiliation of the Kryn Dominion. Disabled ships, captured bases, a proud warrior race reduced to begging for mercy. This cannot stand, Velara declared. Humanity has violated every principle of galactic order. They built the fleet in secret. They attacked a council member species. They threatened the very foundation of our civilization. The High Council members shifted in their seats. They were old, these rulers of the Karathi Empire. They remembered when their species dominated half the galaxy through military might, but that was before the Great Wars, before the treaties that limited everyone. What do you propose? Asked High Chancellor Mork. His voice carried the weight of 3 centuries of rule. We assemble a coalition fleet. We demonstrate overwhelming force. We make humanity understand they cannot threaten the established order. Bilshara's eyes gleamed with cold determination. We remind them why the Galactic Council has maintained peace for 1,000 years. Through strength, through unity, through the willingness to crush those who threaten stability. Within weeks, the call went out across Council space. 30 species answered. They feared what humanity represented, not just military power, but the idea that the old rules no longer applied, that a confined species could break free, that the Council's authority was not absolute. The coalition fleet assembled at Proxima Threshold, a system on the edge of human space. 15,000 vessels from 30 different civilizations, carriers that launched fighter swarms, dreadnoughts with weapons that could crack planets, cruisers equipped with shields that had never been breached. It was the largest military force assembled in 500 years. Surely the Council leaders thought humanity would surrender when faced with such overwhelming power. They sent their demands: dismantle the Shadow Fleet, submit to permanent oversight, accept reduced territory and eternal limits on growth, agree or face annihilation. Admiral Sarah Okonkwo responded with ours. She appeared on every screen in the coalition fleet. Behind her, tactical displays showed human ships moving into position. You have chosen war, Sarah said quietly. You could have chosen peace. You could have chosen to accept us as equals. Instead, you choose to attack. Very well, we accept your challenge. The Shadow Fleet will meet you at Proxima Threshold. Come and teach us our place. We are eager to learn. The coalition fleet waited in formation. Velara commanded from the massive Karathi dreadnought Eternal Might. Around her, admirals from 3 dozen species coordinated their forces. They had trained for this. They had simulated every scenario. They were ready. The human fleet arrived exactly on schedule. But something was wrong. The coalition scanners counted only 5,000 human vessels. Where was the rest of the Shadow Fleet? Where were the tens of thousands of ships that reports claimed existed? They are bluffing, Shara announced. They show weakness. All ships prepare to engage. Show them the price of defiance. The battle began. Coalition Ships opened fire with every weapon they possessed. Energy beams crossed the void, missiles launched in clouds of thousands, fighter craft swarmed forward. In attack formations perfected over centuries, the human ships did not fire back immediately, they simply moved, and their movement was impossible, human. Destroyers phase between dimensions, one moment visible, the next gone. Reappearing kilometers away, coalition. Targeting systems could not lock on. Weapons struck empty space where human ships had been Nankons before, human. Cruisers split into multiple fragments, each piece operating independently. What looked like one ship became 12 smaller vessels surrounding coalition. Dreadnoughts from every angle, human. Carriers launched drones that were not simple machines. They coordinated in swarms of thousands, each one learning from the others, adapting to coalition tactics in real time. They were not artificial intelligence, as the Council understood it. They were something new, something terrifying. The first coalition ships began to die. A Karathi dreadnought shield simply turned off. Engineers screamed in confusion as their systems rebooted themselves. Then a human weapon struck, not an energy beam, not a missile, something that made the very atoms of the ship's hull forget how to hold together. The dreadnought came apart like sand and wind. A V-Rex carrier launched its fighters only to watch them turn on their mother ship. The human electronic warfare was invisible, undetectable. The fighter pilots never knew their systems had been compromised. They fired on their own fleet, creating chaos and confusion. An entire formation of Selenar cruisers watched their weapons fire backward. Their own missiles turned and struck their own ships. Physics itself seemed to betray them. How could humans make weapons disobey their targeting? How could they rewrite the laws of cause and effect? Belshazzar watched her fleet die. Ships exploded, formations collapsed. Desperate calls for retreat filled the communication channels. In 6 hours, 9,000 coalition vessels were destroyed or disabled. The humans had not lost a single ship. All vessels withdraw. Belshazzar finally ordered. Pride in tactics both demanded retreat. There was no shame in fleeing an enemy you could not comprehend. The human fleet allowed them to run. They could have pursued. They could have destroyed every last coalition ship. Instead, they simply stopped firing. They held their position and let the survivors escape. Admiral Okonkwo's face appeared on every fleeing ship screen. Go home, she said. Tell your leaders what you witnessed here. Tell them that humanity does not want to rule the galaxy. We only want to live in it as equals. Tell them that we demonstrated mercy today. Tell them that next time we might not be so kind. Go. Run. Remember, the coalition fleet limped away from Proxima threshold. 9,000 ships lost, hundreds of thousands dead. The worst military defeat in Council history, all because they underestimated humanity. Belshazzar returned to Korath. Prime in disgrace, she stood before the High Council once more. This time she did not demand action. She had no demands left. They are not stronger because of their numbers, she reported. They are stronger because their technology makes ours look primitive. They are stronger because they think in ways we do not understand. They are stronger because they prepared while we grew comfortable. We cannot defeat them. Not now, perhaps not ever. The High Council sat in silence. Finally, High Chancellor Mork spoke. Then what do we Do we negotiate? Belshara said. Words tasted like poison. We recognized them as equals. We reform the council too. Include them, we adapt or we die. News of the battle spread across the galaxy. Within days, the council's authorities shattered some species immediately, sought diplomatic relations with humanity. Others retreated into isolation, fearing they would be next. But humanity did not pursue conquest. The Shadow Fleet dispersed across space, defending human worlds but making no aggressive moves. Admiral Okonkwo broadcast humanity's terms: simple, direct, fair, equal representation in a reformed galactic assembly, abolishment of all species limiting treaties, mutual defense pacts for all who wanted them, protection for weaker species, shared technology programs, a new galactic order based on respect rather than fear. Some species accepted immediately. Others hesitated. A few refused. Outright, they called humanity tyrants, conquerors, monsters who hid behind words of peace while wielding terrible weapons. On Earth, in the capital city of Geneva, crowds gathered to watch the news. They celebrated victory. They mourned those lost. They debated what it all meant. In a quiet apartment overlooking the city, Ambassador Chen Wei watched the celebrations with mixed feelings. His aide, a young woman named Ma, sat beside him. We won, Mia said. We proved ourselves. The galaxy will respect us. Now Chen nodded slowly. Yes, we won. But I wonder at what cost. We built weapons in secret. We planned for war. While speaking of peace, we became the very thing we always feared: strong enough to hurt others. Does that make us different from the species we opposed? We showed mercy, Maya argued. We could have destroyed the coalition fleet. We let them retreat. This time, Chen said softly. But what about next time? What happens when someone threatens us again? Will we show mercy twice, 3 times? Or will we decide that mercy is weakness? Power changes those who hold it. The Shadow Fleet makes us strong. But will it also make us cruel? Maya had no answer. In the streets below, the celebrations continued. Humanity had won its place among the stars, but the hardest battles were yet to come, not against external enemies, but against the darkness that lived in every species. Heart, the temptation to use power, the desire to dominate, the belief that might makes right. The universe would never forget the day humanity revealed the Shadow Fleet. The question remained, would humanity remember why they built it in the first place? For defense, for justice, for peace, not for conquest, not for glory, not for empire. Time would tell if they could stay true to those ideals. Time would tell if power would corrupt them. Time would tell if the Shadow Fleet would remain a shield or become a sword. The stars watched and waited to see what humanity would become. 6 months after the Battle of Proxima Threshold, the galaxy looked very different. The old Galactic Council had dissolved. In its place, the Galactic Assembly formed with representatives from 60 species. Humanity held seats equal to any other race. The Treaty of Confined Development was abolished. Species could now develop as they wished, limited only by mutual agreements and basic rules against genocide. Many species welcomed the changes. The Tari, who had lived under Karathi domination for centuries, celebrated their new freedom. The Manwans, small traders who had been bullied by larger empires, found human protection valuable. Dozens of smaller civilizations saw humanity as liberators, but others saw only tyranny. With a human face, they whispered that humanity had simply replaced one empire with another, that the Shadow Fleet enforced peace through fear rather than law, that humans spoke of equality while pointing guns at anyone who disagreed. These whispers grew into something darker. In the shadows of space stations and hidden colonies, a new alliance formed. They called themselves the Liberation Pact, 23 species united by their hatred of humanity's new power. The Liberation Pact began with propaganda. Messages spread through underground networks, videos showing human warships looming over alien worlds, stories of human arrogance and human cruelty. Most were exaggerations. Some were complete lies, but fear does not need truth to spread. Then came the violence. A bomb on a human trade station killed 40 people. Sabotage of a human colony's life support systems killed 200. An assassination attempt on Ambassador Chen Wei failed but killed 6 of his staff members. Admiral Sarah Okonkwo convened an emergency meeting of her senior commanders aboard the flagship Shadow of Earth. The holographic table displayed recent attack sites across 15 systems. They are using terror tactics, explained Commander James Harrison, Chief of Intelligence. Small cells, coordinated timing, maximum civilian casualties to create fear and anger. Do we know who leads them? Sarah asked. We have intelligence pointing to several species. The Zenari provide funding. Vorlok supply weapons. The Kesh provide safe havens, but the real leadership remains hidden. Captain Alina Rodriguez spoke up. She commanded a battle group patrolling the outer territories. Admiral, my crews are angry. We protect these aliens and they kill our civilians. My officers want permission to retaliate. Retaliate against whom? Sarah asked sharply. The Zenari government denies involvement. The Vorlok claim their weapons were stolen. The Klesh say the terrorists act without official support. We cannot punish entire species for the actions of extremists. Then what do we do? Alina demanded. Watch our people die. Sarah stood and looked at each officer in turn. We remember who we are. We built the Shadow Fleet to protect, not to terrorize. If we respond with overwhelming force against civilians, we prove the Liberation Pact correct. We become the monsters they claim we are. So we do nothing. Another commander asked bitterly. We do what humans do best. We adapt, we investigate, we find the real leaders, and we bring them to justice, not revenge. Justice. Sarah's voice was steel. I will not allow this fleet to become a weapon of indiscriminate violence. I will not let anger turn us into what we fought against. Is that clear? The officers nodded, though some looked unhappy. They were soldiers. They wanted simple answers. Enemy targets to destroy, clear battles to win. This new war offered none of that. On Earth the debates grew heated. The global parliament convened special sessions to discuss the terror attacks. Peace advocates argued that humanity should withdraw from galactic affairs. Military advocates pushed for stronger responses. The argument split families and friendships. Maya, Ambassador Chen's aide, found herself the middle of these debates. She organized town halls where citizens could voice their concerns. At one such meeting in Rome, an elderly woman stood to speak. My grandson died on trade Station 7, the woman said, her voice Shook with grief and rage, he was 19, he wanted to see the galaxy, to meet other species, to build a better future. They killed him with a bomb, and what does our government do? They talk, they investigate, they show restraint. Where is justice for my grandson? The room erupted in applause. Maya felt the anger and pain washing over her. These people wanted action. They wanted someone to pay for their losses. She understood completely, but she also understood what uncontrolled retaliation would mean. More death, more hatred, an endless cycle of violence that would consume everything humanity had achieved. I cannot give you the answer you want, Maya told the crowd. I cannot promise quick revenge, but I can promise that we will not become murderers ourselves. Your grandson died because extremists fear what humanity represents, not domination, not empire, but the idea that different species can live together as equals. If we respond with mass violence, we prove them right. We dishonor everyone who died believing in a better future. Some in the crowd nodded, others shouted in anger. There were no easy answers. There was only the hard work of maintaining principles in the face of tragedy. The Liberation Pack struck again. This time they targeted not humans but alien species allied with humanity. Atari school was bombed. A man on hospital was poisoned. The message was clear. Those who sided with humanity would pay the price. The Galactic Assembly convened an emergency session. Representatives demanded action. Some called for martial law. Others wanted full military deployment to suspected Liberation Pact strongholds. Ambassador Chen stood before the assembly. He looked older than his years. The attacks had taken their toll on him personally, but his voice remained steady. We face a test, Chen said, not of our military strength. We proved that at Proxima Threshold. This is a test of our character. The Liberation Pact wants us to overreact. They want us to bomb civilians. They want us to prove that might makes right. They want us to become tyrants so they can claim justification for their terror. But people are dying, shouted Tari representative. My people are dying. What good is character if we are all dead? Character is the only thing that separates us from animals, Chen replied. We can kill. Any species can kill. The question is whether we can show restraint, whether we can pursue justice without becoming murderers ourselves, whether we can build something better than the cycle of violence that has plagued this galaxy for millennia. The assembly voted to support targeted operations against confirmed Liberation Pact cells, not mass bombardments, not collective punishment, precise strikes based on solid intelligence. It was not what everyone wanted, but it was the path that preserved humanity's principles. The Shadow Fleet deployed special operations teams, small groups of soldiers trained in precision combat. They infiltrated Liberation Pact cells. They gathered intelligence. They arrested leaders when possible. They eliminated threats when necessary. It was slow work, dangerous work. More soldiers died in these operations than in the Battle of Proxima Threshold, but slowly the Liberation Pact began to crumble. Without popular support, their recruiting dried up. Without sanctuary, their cells were exposed. Without funding, their operations became desperate and sloppy. Then came the breakthrough. Intelligence operatives tracked a coded transmission to a hidden base in the Cygni sector. The base was not owned by any Liberation Pact Species, it belonged to someone else. Entirely, Admiral Okonkwo studied the intelligence report in her private quarters. Commander Harrison stood beside her, his face grim. The base belongs to the architects, Harrison said. An ancient species. They have been isolated for millennia. We thought they were extinct. Why would an ancient species support the Liberation Pact? Sarah asked. Because they fear us all. Of us, every younger species in the galaxy. Our intelligence suggests they have been manipulating galactic events for thousands of years. They want to keep everyone else divided and weak. Sarah felt a chill. The Liberation Pact is not acting independently. They are being used exactly. The architects provided them with advanced weapons, encrypted communications, strategic intelligence. They orchestrated this entire conflict to weaken both humanity and our allies. Then the Liberation Pact are victims as much as perpetrators. Sarah said quietly. They think they are fighting for freedom. They do not realize they are pawns in someone else's game. What do we do? Sarah thought for a long moment. We expose the truth. We show the Liberation Pact who is really manipulating them. We offer them a choice. Join us against the real enemy, or continue being used. They may not believe us. Then we show them proof. We capture the architect base. We get evidence, and we make sure every species in the galaxy understands what has been happening. Sarah stood. Her decision made. Assemble a task force. We are going to the Cygni sector, and we are going to show the galaxy who the real threat is. The mission launched within days. A combined fleet of human and allied vessels, not to conquer, not to destroy, but to discover the truth that would change everything. The stars waited to see if humanity could turn enemies into allies, if they could break the cycle of violence, if they could prove that justice and mercy were not weaknesses, but the greatest strengths of all. The universe was watching, and it would never forget how this chapter of history unfolded. The combined fleet entered the Cygni's sector with extreme caution. 20 human ships alongside vessels from 8 allied species. They expected resistance. They expected traps. What they found was silence, empty space, no signals, no ships, nothing. Something is wrong, Commander Harrison said on the bridge of the shadow of Earth. Our intelligence said there was a base here. Admiral Sarah Okonkwo studied the scanner displays. Then she saw it. Gravitational anomaly that should not exist. Space folding in on itself. Ways that defied physics. There she pointed. The base is not in our dimension. It exists in a pocket of folded space. That is why we cannot see it. How do we reach it? Asked Captain Elena Rodriguez. Before Sarah could answer, the space in front of them tore open. A massive structure emerged. It was not a station. It was not a ship. It was something ancient and terrifying. Crystalline structures that hurt to look at, geometry that made no sense, technology so advanced it seemed like magic. A voice filled every ship's communication system. It was not transmitted through radio or quantum channels. It simply existed in their minds. You should not have come here, young ones. The voice was old, older than humanity, older than the Carathi Empire, older than recorded history itself. We seek truth, Sarah broadcast. We seek to understand why you manipulate the younger species, why you turn us against each other. We protect the galaxy. The voice responded. You young species are dangerous. You expand. You war. You destroy. We learned this lesson. 10 million years ago, we nearly destroyed everything. Now we ensure others do not repeat our mistakes. Holographic snorts. Image formed in space. It showed the history of the architects. Once they had been like humans, curious, ambitious, expanding across thousands of worlds. Then they had developed weapons that could destroy stars. In their wars with other ancient species, they had sterilized entire sectors of space. Billions of worlds rendered lifeless. Trillions of beings dead. The survivors had retreated into their pocket dimension. They had watched the younger species emerge, and they had manipulated events to ensure no one else gained the power to repeat their mistakes. You kept everyone weak, Sarah said. You prevented progress. You orchestrated wars and conflicts to maintain control. We maintained survival. The voice countered. Without our guidance, you would all destroy yourselves. You already show the signs. Humanity builds weapons in secret. Humanity strikes first and negotiates later. You are becoming what we once were. We cannot allow that. Sarah felt anger rising in her chest. You do not have the right to decide our fate. You do not have the right to treat us like children who cannot be trusted with our own future. We have the right of power, the voice said coldly. We survived when others did not. That gives us the right to protect the galaxy from itself, from the shadows of the pocket dimension. More structures emerged, ships, thousands of them each, one massive beyond comprehension, each one armed with weapons that humanity could not understand. You will withdraw, the voice commanded. You will dismantle your shadow fleet. You will accept limits on your development, or we will impose those limits ourselves. Sarah looked at her tactical displays. The architect fleet could destroy them in moments. Every instinct screamed at her to retreat, to survive, to fight another day, but she had not come here to run. We will not surrender, Sarah said. Not to you, not to anyone. Humanity has earned the right to determine its own destiny. We may make mistakes. We may stumble, but we will do so on our own terms. Then you will die, the voice said without emotion, like so many others who refused wisdom. The architect ships powered up, energy readings spiked across Sarah's instruments. They were about to attack. This was the end. Humanity had come so far only to face an enemy they could not defeat. Then something unexpected happened. Transmission came through, not to Sarah's ship, to the architects. It came from the Liberation Pact. Wait, said a voice Sarah recognized. It belonged to Commander Zethal of the Zenari. Liberation Pact leader, we demand to know the truth. Did you manipulate us? Did you use us to attack humanity? Silence from the architects. Then we guided you toward necessary actions. Humanity needed to be contained. You served that purpose. You lied to us, Zethal said, his voice shaking with rage. You told us humanity wanted to conquer the galaxy. You told us they were the threat, but you are the real tyrants. You manipulated us into becoming murderers. More transmissions came in. Liberation Pact cells across multiple systems broadcasting the same message. They had intercepted evidence from the architect base, coded instructions, strategic guidance, proof of manipulation. The entire conflict had been orchestrated. You turned us into weapons, Zethal continued. You made us kill innocents. You destroyed our honor. For what? To maintain your control. To keep us weak and divided. Admiral Okonkwo seized the moment. She broadcast on open channels that every ship in the sector could hear. Human, alien, Liberation Pact. Everyone, the architects fear what we can become, Sarah said, not separately, but together. They fear that if we unite, we will surpass them. They fear becoming irrelevant, so they manipulate us into fighting each other. They keep us small, they keep us afraid, but we do not have to accept their vision of the future. She paused, choosing her next words carefully. I cannot force unity. I cannot demand peace, but I can make an offer to the Liberation Pact, to every species listening. Join us not as subjects, not as conquered peoples, but as equals. Help us show the architects that we are not children to be controlled, that we can build something better than their fear-driven isolation. Noble words, the architect voice said. But words do not change reality. You are still too young, too dangerous, too likely to destroy yourselves. Then watch us, Sarah challenged. Watch us prove you wrong. Watch us build a civilization based on cooperation instead of domination. Watch us solve our problems without destroying the galaxy. And if we fail, you can say you were right, but give us the chance to try. And if we refuse, Sarah took a deep breath, then we fight. We will lose. Your technology is superior, but we will fight anyway. Because freedom is worth dying for. Because self-determination is worth any price, and every species watching will see that the mighty architects fear younger races so much they must destroy us rather than let us choose our own path. Silence stretched across space. Seconds felt like hours. The architect ships held their firing positions. Sarah's fleet held steady, prepared to die if necessary. Then slowly the architect ships powered down their weapons. You are fools, the voice said, but perhaps that is what the galaxy needs. Foolish courage instead of wise fear. We will withdraw to our pocket dimension. We will watch, but we will no longer interfere. Prove us wrong, young ones. Show us that you can build without destroying, that you can grow without consuming, that you can achieve power without falling to its temptations. Massive architect structures folded back into their hidden dimension. Space sealed itself. The ancient species withdrew, leaving the younger races to determine their own fate. In the aftermath, an emergency conference convened in neutral space. Representatives from the Liberation Pact met with the Galactic Assembly. Conversations were difficult, painful, full of anger and grief, but they talked. Commander Zethal faced Ambassador Chen directly. We killed your people. We cannot undo that. We cannot ask forgiveness for what we did, even if we were manipulated. Chen looked at the Zenari commander for a long moment. You were used. We were all used. The architects played on our fears and differences, but we can choose how this story ends, with more bloodshed or with something new. The choice is ours now. Over the following months, treaties were signed. The Liberation Pact dissolved. Its member species joined the Galactic Assembly with full rights and representation. War criminals on all sides faced justice in new international courts. It was messy. It was imperfect, but it was progress. Shadow Fleet underwent transformation. No longer just a human military force. It became a truly galactic defense organization. Ships from dozens of species joined the fleet. Shared technology programs accelerated development for everyone. Former enemies trained together, fought together, built Trust through shared sacrifice, 1 year. After the confrontation with the architects, Admiral Sarah Okonkwo stood at a memorial on Earth. The monument bore the names of every human who had died in the conflicts: soldiers, civilians, diplomats, thousands of names carved in black stone. Ambassador Chen stood beside her. He was preparing to retire. The years of service had aged him beyond his actual years. Do you think we made the right choices? Sarah asked quietly. Chen smiled slightly. I think we made human choices. We adapted when we had to. We fought when necessary. We showed mercy when possible, and we built something. Instead of just destroying, history will judge whether that was right, but I can live with what we did. The architects are still watching. They could return. They could decide we have failed their test. Then we will face that when it comes, but we will face it together, not as divided species fighting each other, but as a unified civilization that chose cooperation over conflict. Chen placed a hand on the memorial stone. These people died so we could have that choice. Let us make sure their sacrifice was not wasted. Sarah nodded. In orbit above Earth, the Shadow Fleet held formation. Human dreadnoughts alongside Zenari cruisers, Tari carriers next to Karathi destroyers, former enemies now allies. The fleet was no longer just humanity's weapon, it was everyone's shield. Across the galaxy, on thousands of worlds, billions of beings went about their lives. They traded, they learned, they argued and compromised and slowly built something new. There were still conflicts, still disagreements, still the occasional violence, but the cycle of manipulation had been broken. The younger species now wrote their own story in their pocket dimension. The architects watched. They did not interfere. They simply observed. Perhaps they hoped the younger species would fail, proving their ancient wisdom correct. Perhaps they hoped they would succeed, showing that a new approach was possible. Only time would tell, but one thing was certain: the universe would never forget the day humanity revealed the Shadow Fleet, the day they proved that strength combined with mercy could change everything, the day they transformed from victims into protectors, the day they showed that power need not corrupt, that justice need not require vengeance, that unity was possible even among the most different species. The stars shone on a galaxy transformed. The Shadow Fleet patrolled the trade routes. The Galactic Assembly debated policies and made laws. Former Liberation Pact members contributed to building the civilization they once tried to destroy, and in the darkness between the stars, something new was growing. Not an empire, not a confederation, but a true community of species learning to live together, learning to respect differences, learning to solve problems without war. It was imperfect, it was messy, it was beautiful. Admiral Sarah Okonkwo returned to her flagship. She had work to do, patrols to organize, officers to train, threats to counter, but she felt hope for the first time in years. Real hope, not the desperate hope of the cornered and weak, but the confident hope of those who know they can face whatever comes. The Shadow Fleet dispersed to their duties across the galaxy, silent, watchful, ready, a reminder of what humanity could do when pushed to the edge, a promise that they would protect all who needed protection, a warning that they would never again accept being victims. The universe watched and remembered, and perhaps, just perhaps, it smiled at what these young species were becoming, not Perfect, not utopian, but real trying. Growing, learning from mistakes. Building something worth believing in. The story of humanity's shadow fleet had begun with fear and violence, but it ended with hope and unity, and that made all the difference.